So you sign up in May of 2003, and for a little over 3 years, an overseas deployment, in theory, was a possibility. But then it became a reality.
Yes.
How did you get the word that you were actually going to be deployed, and what was your family's reaction?
Yeah, so I was at Fort Stewart in Georgia when our unit had a meeting and basically said, this is the point of no return. We are getting deployed. We're going to Afghanistan. And I was at the end of my 3 years, so I could have just opted out. I'm at the end of my contract. So I actually
See ya.
I actually extended to deploy. So yeah, I called my wife and said, hey, I'm getting deployed. And at the time didn't tell her that I extended to deploy. Just said I was getting deployed. So yeah, I made the choice to do that. And yeah. And thankfully lived through that. But yeah, I chose to go over there.
What was the process of actually heading to Afghanistan?
We did all of our train up in Mississippi in Camp Shelby.
Okay.
Which is right outside of Hattiesburg.
Yeah.
Is that where Brett Favre's from? I think so. It's right outside
It's
of that.
Brett Favre. Who cares?
Yeah, right. Only if you're in Wisconsin. Yeah, so we were in Mississippi for months. They let us come home, I think, in April for 30 days, right before we shipped out. And then, it takes a while for you to get your whole unit in country because our whole brigade deployed over there. So it took us, and they spin it up so you can be in like one of 5 or 6 chalks, which will be a group of hundreds that'll be coming in country. They cycle it in. And I was, I think, in the 3rd group that went over there. So my actually boots on ground date was like May the 8th or something like that.
And you were in the 1st Battalion of the 118th
Yes,
Regiment.
that sounds right. Sounds right.
Man, I did research on how to say that correctly.
That's awesome.
Give me a little bit of credit here.
That's awesome. That's very good.
Yeah.
It's been a minute since I had to think like that. But yeah, that sounds exactly right.
Okay. On the plane, actually going to Afghanistan.
Commercial.
What was going through your mind? Was there fear? Was there expectation? Was there maybe a little bit of excitement? Was there a little bit of, hey, let's turn this thing around and go back home? This is all a mistake?
No. At that point, it was all full, to use a pun, full throttle, just like I was ready to go.
Where you?
I'd spent so much of my life, at that point to me, I spent so much of my life training to go do this. And at that point, I was in a position of leadership and it's just like, this is what I signed up for. I mean, when I signed up, that's really what I was signing up for, was to go fight the bad guys, And at that point, I had been in Mississippi, and anywhere was better than being in Mississippi. So, like, let's go,
For our listeners in Mississippi, the views expressed are not necessarily those.
But when you're trapped in Camp Shelby for 6 months, it changes your perspective. Mississippi is a great state. But in the air, Mississippi would have been great when you compare it to Afghanistan.
Okay.
So,
all right. Okay.
But at the time, it seemed like anything was better than being locked in a base. Going over there, everything's in stages. So we couldn't just fly straight into Afghanistan. We actually had to go to Kuwait, and then that's where you actually in process into the theater of operation.
Okay.
So Kuwait's a central point that processes people into Iraq or processes people into Afghanistan. So you come in there, you get all of the things you have to do there, and then you take a plane from there and go to Afghanistan. And then they have to fly in a certain way for air traffic security, and then the next thing you know, 4 hours later, you're on the ground in country.
Once you got boots on the ground in Afghanistan and went through whatever initiation that you had to go through, what was a typical day like for you? What was your responsibility?
Yeah, there was a little bit of a cycle on how we did things. The original issue for us is I was in Sec 4, which is security force. That was our responsibility. So that ranged from our guys pulling gate guard at the actual base we were on, that we did high security personal security details where we would take dignitaries or we would take high-ranking officers and we would be security for them as they travel around our what they called RSEC, but which basically would be our region. We would do convoys. We would do convoy security. We would do movement to contact, where we would actually hear this is where a bad guy is, and we would go do that. A lot of our guys assisted other what they called ETTs, which would be embedded training teams, which those were American soldiers who were designated to help train the Afghan forces, because the whole goal was for Afghanistan to gain its independence and be able to defend itself. And our role in that at the time was for our guys to train them on how to operate and how to do things, how to protect themselves, defend themselves from the bad guys. So we integrated into some of those embedded training teams. So some of our guys, as soon as we got boots on the ground, they left and went with some of those teams. And my role evolved into being a squad leader. So I was over 6 to 8 guys, and we would do all of those same roles, and we would rotate. So and other thing we do would be a quick reaction force, or QRF. So if something happened to one of those guys, then we would be the reaction force that would go out and help them if they got into a fight or whatever.
Yeah.
So we would have guys that would be on standby waiting to respond in a QRF fashion. We had guys that their week was at the gate all week. And, we had guys that were doing convoy escorts. We had guys that were embedded with teams. So my role was very multifaceted. And we also had the towers over the compound at night. So we kind of had a lot of different things happening. And I participated in all of that.
What were the living conditions like?
Well, it kind of depended on where you were in that scope of work.
Okay.
And sometimes we go out on missions and I'd be gone for 2 weeks and be living out of the vehicle. Basically, at the time we were using the up armored Humvees, which were overweight, under horsepowered, with no basic defense on the underneath parts of those. I wonder why they phased those out. But that's what we were the last group to run with those. And when we would go on missions like that, where we'd be gone, we'd sleep out under the stars, pull security, and, just be out in the Wild West, basically. From that extreme to me, when I was back at this particular home base that I was at, they would have these wooden huts that were basic structures, and they would put in dividing walls inside of them, open roof, but dividing walls. So you kind of had your own little space, but you could yell across the room at the same time.
Yeah.
And they had like makeshift little mattresses and stuff. So that was that was my home, when I wasn't out doing things. And then sometimes we would go and we would be on a mission, whether we're supporting a convoy, whether we're doing the personal security stuff or whatever, and we would go stay at somebody else's base. So that could be anything. But it was usually either being in kind of that home base area in the wooden hut, or kind of out in the stars, or kind of anything in between. But I would say most of my nights were spent in that wooden hut, probably.
You probably don't remember this, but you and I exchanged a handful of emails while you were in country. 2 or 3, hey, how you doing? And then I think we did one email interview for a story on NASCAR.com. But in the first email that I got from you, and it was probably, I think you'd been in country for maybe 3-4 months, and you said that you hadn't seen any combat. Mm-hmm. The next one I got from you, Lyndon, said that you had experienced a little bit. Mm-hmm. You got some mortar rounds, and there was some small arms fire. But then the last one that I got from you, you said that you had gone out, and I love the way that you put it. You said, I finally got to go on a good mission.
Right.
And you said that you had gone out looking for the bad guys and wound up getting in a 40-minute, pretty intense firefight.
Yeah.
Is there any way to put into words what that 40 minutes was like?
Yeah, there is. It was a very interesting day. That particular mission, we were helping support the embedded trainers that were training the Afghan police. So they had this bad guy, and you wouldn't believe the amount of work that went into the prep for this mission. They knew they were there. Here they are. Special Forces has run the drone recon over this area over and over again. We got the maps. We got everything about this mission. And we get there, and we go to kick in the door, and it's the wrong house. All the intel had the wrong house,
Wow.
But anyway, so my guys, I was in charge of our Sec 4 guys, and then they were embedded into the vehicles of the trainers. right? So
how many guys were you in charge of, basically?
It ranged from 6 to 10, depending on what we were doing. And then if I'm in charge of the convoy, then technically I'm in charge of 25 people that are going out on a convoy, but it's always about me and my guys. And then those people would be passengers. It didn't matter what their rank were. They were under our care, while we were gone, while we were out. And so they had to listen to whatever, because we were there to keep them safe. Yeah. They may be doing something humanitarian, but if something goes down, they're not going to be the ones pulling the trigger. They're going to be the ones that are going to be hiding in the vehicle. So that's the way we approached it back then. But the mission you're talking about, we did a lot of prep work on that. And like I said, we go to the house that all the prep work was done on, and it's the wrong house. And so in that chaos of this is the wrong house, everybody gets out of the vehicles, everybody surrounds the house, it's the wrong house. So I'm in the first vehicle with the guy that's over the whole mission. And the interpreter comes up and says, this is the wrong house, it's actually up there. So, all right, well, let's go. I mean, now they know we're here, so we got to move quick. So we move up in that vehicle and get into position on the right house. Well, in all the chaos, all the other vehicles didn't move. So my vehicle and the commander and the gunner, and we're probably 250 yards from this house off to my left, and there's no other friendly people around. So we're sitting there waiting on them, calling on the radio, trying to get them to come up, and then gunfire starts. And so at first it was only coming from where the building was. There was I think it's a PKM. There was an automatic machine gun on top of that house and started firing at us. So we obviously started returning fire, directing our gunner to return fire on them. I get out of the vehicle, start pulling security, and start returning fire. And then it was like, this is the picture. So all my guys, we're on the radio, all my guys are back. They can't get to me. They're caught in this high-walled area where these huts had like 15-foot walls for some reason, these mud walls. And so they can't see me. All they can do is hear the gunfire going on. And so people are getting on the radio and like screaming. And it's just chaos, And so like this, I'm just like, okay, this is nonsense. So I just go on the radio and say, tell everybody, shut up, listen, this is the situation. You need to get to me. We're going to hold down the fort until you can try to get here. And I mean, it's like, that sounds awesome. And at that moment, I mean, all hell starts breaking loose. Like I started getting fire from literally 360. And I remember crouching down, looking up. And at this point, it's like a canopy of tracer rounds going overhead. RPGs are going off. I mean, it's just like, it's crazy. And I just remember capturing that moment in my head going, this is insane. Like this amount of, where are all these people at? That's what I was thinking.
This is a long way from Talladega.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt about it. And so I'm just like thinking, where are all these people? Like to create this much fire. I mean, it was just, it looked like fireworks were going off, And so anyway, so that was Harry. It probably was 5 or 10 minutes, but it felt like it was an hour. Just because when you're exposed like that and you're taking fire, you return, all this stuff's going on. And we were filming all of it, which is crazy. One particular moment, I was standing up returning fire. And in that moment, I was concerned. I was heightened, but I wasn't like concerned I was going to die. Like two different moments. Like the moments where you're concerned you're going to die are different than the moments you're just concerned in general, or you're heightened because of the combat situation. So I wasn't like concerned for my life. Well, we go back and watch the video, and you can hear rounds ricocheting off the vehicle that I'm standing. Like literally, we can go back now and paint the picture of how there were rounds hitting all around me, and I'm completely unaware of it in the moment.
How many people were with you?
I had 4 total.
Okay.
And then, we had 30 Americans, and then we had a whole slew of Afghan police that were also with us. So as we were returning fire, trying to get superiority, our guys finally broke through all that chaos and were able to get up to where we were. And then we were able to, kind of push those guys back, surround them, actually, take out the bad guy and found weapons caches, all the good things that you see on the news. Eventually we were able to get to that point. So it was It was an intense day.
And nobody got hurt.
No.
None of the good guys got hurt.
No.
Wow.
It's crazy too. The amount of fire that went out, and for nobody to get hurt seriously that's a divine act for me. But
yeah,
we did have a guy, an Afghan police guy, shoot his thumb off the night before. So that was the only real injury that I remember. It was interesting.
Was there ever a point during all this time going out on missions and this firefight, the mortars and the small arms fire and all that, was there ever a point where you did actually sit down and say, you know what, this is a long way from Talladega. This is a long way from getting to race for a living?
Mm-hmm. I was done. I really was, man. When I walked away from it, I was done. And I think there was a little bit of there was regret from the standpoint of not having those relationships with people. It came back to people for me. I think I missed that, but I did not miss the dynamics, that I lived through. When I was done, I was done. And so, when I was over there, man, I was doing my job, and I was so impacted by being over there for that long that, it was literally it was probably as far from me as.
Like a completely different lifetime.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Did any of the people that you served with, were they aware of your having been a race car driver?
Yeah, it eventually got out. I didn't say anything, Yeah. That's not really who I am. I was an arrogant jerk, but I wasn't that much so that I would be like, and I really, what was I really going to say? Hey, when I was like one of the youngest winners in Daytona, like, what about now? 10 years later.
Yeah.
Well, not so much now, but back when I was younger, I was better. Well, everybody can say that, right? So it wasn't, for me, it wasn't like prominent on my mind. And so, yes, guys eventually found out. Actually, my drill sergeant found out in basic training.
Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, at the time, it was not good. It was not good at all. But after I graduated, it was great. We wound up being amazing friends for about 10 years, and then he got redeployed and is in Alaska now, but we still maintain contact. But there was relationships that developed out of that, not because of racing, but it was part of the intrigue that probably developed our relationship. Yeah, and then my guys in my unit found out over the course of time. So, they all, I so really focused on being a good soldier that when they found that out, it didn't deter our relationship. It enhanced it, because they were like, really? That guy?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way, and then of course you Google and you see me in, much younger state in a racing uniform. So it became a very funny topic of conversation. Of course, they wanted me to drive everywhere, and everything. It didn't matter if we were in a civilian vehicle or if we were overseas in a Humvee. They want me to drive,
Yeah.
So, but I enjoyed it because I like driving. I would run missions from the driver's seat of Humvees.
Wow.
Because I could. If you can go around some of the places we had to go around and race, door to door with somebody, it's easy for me to multitask while driving a Humvee in charge of a convoy and, doing all the other stuff you have to do. So,
what was it like for you when you came home?
Yeah, so it's really hard to describe what being deployed for a year into a combat zone is like and how that affects you. There's a couple ways I've kind of come up with to describe it. I think one is that year that you spend in country is like 10 years here. The amount of time, the intensity of that time is truly like 10 years here. And also the level of aggressiveness that you have to live with there. Like, I put it this way, if level 10 in aggression is being ready to kill someone, in America, we should never get above a 2 or a 3 where you get in an argument, maybe a fist fight.
Yeah.
And when you're over there, you live at level 10 every day of your life for a year. And that impacts you in a major way. And when you come home, Like you really can't. The part, and you've heard this over all my life. I've heard about people that were in Vietnam or people that are in World War II, or those soldiers have a unique bond that cannot be explained. And it's to me is because of the amount of intense time and the things that you go through that you can't relate that back to here, because here, if I want to go to the grocery store and get groceries, I can. I don't have to worry about my security for the most part. Nobody's going to shoot at me.
Yeah.
Nobody, like every time we left our compound and went to wherever we went, it was constantly a state of, is this person assessing whether this person is trying to kill me? And if they are, or if they are a threat to me, then I have to respond in a manner that keeps me safe. Whether that's shoot their car or shoot them or run them off the road or whatever. Whether it doesn't matter. It's like that's what kept you safe. So when you come back here and I'm driving a Suburban down the road and I see a bag of trash on the side of the road, the first thing I think of, is it going to explode? And
do you still?
No.
Okay.
No, it's been too long. But when I first came back, I wanted to run down the middle of the road, and anybody that was, and I wanted to run people off the road, because that's the way we dealt with it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's how you have to respond. Yeah. And I was messed up. I really was. And having this just crazy things happen to guys, not just in country, but here at home, where a guy trusts his wife or trusts his girlfriend with the money that he's making. At least you're over there making money. At least I'm getting, a tax-free benefit from being in country.
Right.
And then he comes home and he's got zero money left because his wife left him and took all his money, or his sister took all his money, or these crazy things where you come out of what we went through and then you come home to this.
And have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're just like so unfair, and you see how, how guys struggle with that, and it's so hard to relate from there back to here, because the worlds are completely different worlds, and you see sides of human beings and different countries, and it just gave me such a perspective on life, number one. Number two, on what it's like to be an American, and how it's a big country, but we do live in a bubble here. Yeah. And, what the rest of the world functions like. And there were some priceless things that happened for me, the guy who was, at Talladega racing for a living, to be able to experience life, in a different way. And it definitely is, I needed it. It changed me in a way that was very hard for me to go through, but turns out to be very positive. And one of the reasons why it was very positive for me is because I came home to a family that loved me, and was willing to love me through my issues, and, willing to, didn't understand, but at least, supported me. And that, not everybody had that, so that was huge.
Approximately how long did those issues last?
I feel like it was intense for the mental aspect of being deployed, coming back. I think it was intense for probably 2 months of just like really torturous from the standpoint of every situation. Is it a threat or not a threat? How do I respond? Didn't want to be in crowds. All that kind of stuff. And that the whole, I still don't like being in crowds today. Yeah, I think that's probably more my personality than it is.
Well, I don't like to be in crowds either.
Combat response, but I think that the hardcore things lasted months, and then some of the subtle impacts probably lasted years. But I don't feel like today I stand here with any sort of residue. Yeah, So I know the guys that I've deployed with that are still struggling with things. Yeah. And so that's tough.